Good morning, everyone. I am Gloria Whitley, and I am your moderator for today. I'd like to start with some housekeeping. I will introduce to you now Dr. Rodney Washington.
Good morning. The rain didn't want us to be great today, but we're going to do it anyway, right? All right. This is an important session. I want to introduce our panelists for this morning's session. We have Dr. Olga Olsby, Associate Dean, School of Social Work, Mary University. We have Councilman Takita Stamps, Ward 4, City of Jackson. We have Patricia Jackson, Fresh Start Program Coordinator, City of Jackson, and Pastor C.J. Rhodes, Mount Helm Baptist Church. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. So our objective this morning, race of childhood and adult trauma are high among incarcerated persons. Trauma exposure has been found to be strongly associated with a wide range of behavioral problems and clinical symptoms. Given the sheer number of incarcerated males of color and the link between trauma and imprisonment, targeted interventions are critical. So during this session, we will attempt to learn what forms of trauma are strongest indicators for criminal activity and or incarceration, review how law enforcement policies, practices, procedures constitute traumatic situations that ultimately lead to mass incarceration, and discuss policy implications and alternatives to address mass incarceration of people for people with mental health concerns. Now, this is really important to me because I think I'm glad we're calling it something now, because this is not a new issue. This is not a new issue. I've worked in both the juvenile juvenile justice system as a correctional officer. I've been a prison sergeant, did some time at Oakley Training School as a correctional counselor. And behind every situation that those young brothers face, there was always a story behind those circumstances. And while it is very easy to say how all young people are off track, give it a new catchphrase and all of that every decade or every couple of years, it is now, I think it's important now that we look inward at our programming, supports, and interventions to see how best we can deal. When we talk about trauma is any situation that impedes your capacity to cope. And so think back on your own selves, in your own experiences. You know, when you visit that neighborhood that's not the best kind of neighborhood, that you know how you get out of your car and you make sure it's locked, you check your surroundings and all of that, and you're concerned about, you know, I hope everything is okay. And while you're in whatever establishment you're in, you're concerned that I hope my car is okay when I get out, you know, get back out of that spot. Think about living in that situation, because see, you're in that situation in a temporary kind of state. But we have young people who live in that situation 24 hours a day. And so they're in a constant state of anxiety about their own safety. And so when we have this discussion, we can't have this discussion as this out-of-body experience. We have to have this discussion in a real way in terms of how best do we approach supporting young individuals, particularly vulnerable populations, particularly young males of color, and try and come up with solutions or at least some sound interventions that are population specific. And so with that being said, we're going to try and move this process along this morning by allowing all of our panelists to come forward in their own way and offer opening statements. We want this to be free-flowing and fluid, you know, this conversation to move. And so we're going to push that forward, and then we'll have a portion, hopefully at the end, to entertain questions from the audience. Does that sound pretty good? So right now, Dr. Olsby, if you'll come forward.
Everyone,
I am so happy to be back here in Jackson to see all my old friends and acquaintances, co-workers. And rather than calling this the Black Family Summit, I need to start calling it my family reunion, you know, because I feel like coming back. There's so many things that's involved in terms of this. And so one of the things that, you know, as I was talking to Dr. West, that I really want us to address is in terms of trauma. One of the things that I'm getting very heavily involved in Miami and with Berry University has to do with trauma and the impact that trauma has on our communities. And I think it's extremely important that we start looking at this. And when we look at what contributes to our mass incarceration, we know the reasons. I think the film 13 is excellent in terms of outlining some of the issues and problems that we have in that. So we know that the issues are complex and that they're varied. We can look at structural inequality, we can look at systematic racism and discrimination, we can look at it as a whole from slavery to export labor. That's a huge issue that we need to look at and think about. And we can look at it in terms of profit for the prison industrial complex. All those things are true. And they're serious issues. And but when we talk about this, we also need to talk about what's really leading into the prison. And we know, we talked about for years the schoolhouse, the jailhouse, and how important this is for African American boys. That is an issue that, you know, we've talked about. It's well documented. What has been lesser known is the gateway into prison for girls, particularly African American girls. There was a major report released about 2 years ago that looked at the fact that for African American girls or girls in general, sexual assault is what generally leads them into prison. And one of the issues, if anyone's ever seen the film Healing Mean, is a fantastic film that this African American woman talks about the fact that for years and years and years, all the trauma that she experienced from childhood, no one ever asked her the key question: what happened? Amen. What happened to you? It was all, look at her, she's back on the street, she's substance abuse, she's prostituting, you know, what is wrong with that girl? No one ever stopped until a key point in her life and asked her, what happened? And so that's one of the things is we're not asking our young girls, what's happening with you? And so that's a key element. But one of the things I really want to talk about today is the mental health issues that we're not addressing in communities. These issues that go undetected, they go undiagnosed, they go untreated until they're in the prison. Prison should not be the first place that people receive mental health treatment. You know, we're locking too many people up who really should be in treatment. That's right. And so that's one of the issues as we're looking in terms of prison. We need to start looking at this issue of trauma and the trauma that these communities suffer. And for people who are really not familiar with the concept of trauma itself, part of the definition is that trauma is the experience of an event by a person that is emotionally painful or distressful, which can result in lasting mental and physical effects. And if you look at trauma, it's defined by the experiences of the survivor, that what is traumatic to one person may not be traumatic to another. Trauma can affect anyone. So two people can experience very traumatic events. One's going to really rebel outwardly and show, that through anger. The other one's going to go inside. Okay? And then you also have people who end up being extremely resilient, who can bounce back. So not everyone's going to react the same way, and we need to recognize that. But one of the quotes that I found that I absolutely love says that there are wounds that never show in the body that are deeper and more hurtful than anything that bleeds. You don't see it a lot, and so we have to make sure that we're really recognizing the fact that just because someone walking down the street, you can't tell, the traumatic events that they've suffered, but they have suffered trauma. And it's going to play itself out in one way or the other. Type of traumas. These are all listed through SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Association Administrative Services in Washington. They're doing a lot of work around trauma and trauma-informed practice and care. And if you haven't had them come down to Jackson and to some of your communities, they'll come and do a training. And it's they do an outstanding job. We've had them twice in Miami to come down and do a training. But if you look in terms of the different types of trauma out there, And I put in red the traumas that we're most likely to see in African American communities and families. And if you look at it, that's a lot of trauma. You know, there are a lot of issues here in terms of sexual abuse and assault, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, victim or witness to domestic violence, victim or witness to community violence, victim or witness to extreme personal and interpersonal violence, historical trauma, and that's one that we don't really talk about, that, you know, as a community, people have witnessed generation after generation of trauma. That takes a toll. And sometimes, you know, when an elderly person is talking about something dramatic that's happening to them, we also live through that as well. My mother talks about a traumatic event that happened to her when she's 10, and even at 85, when she tells that story, it's like it happened yesterday. She says, use the same wording, she shakes, and, you know, I found myself sometimes almost feeling like I was there with her. You know, and so we have to talk about this historic trauma because for a lot of people, it's still with us. They experience school violence, bullying, traumatic grief or separation. A lot of our kids have seen a lot of grief and a lot of loss. You know, they've experienced a lot of death in their lives. And so we haven't really talked about that form of trauma as well. And then system-induced trauma and re-traumatization, okay? And so giving recognition to our trauma and suffering and pain, about 3 weeks ago at Barry University in Miami, I hosted an event with ministers, lay ministers, pastors, people who lead faith-based social service organizations, as well as social workers. And the event was called Trauma, Suffering, and Faith. And it turned out to be a fantastic event, one that I didn't expect because it was the first time we've ever tried that. But it was linking social workers and ministers because I figured we see the same people, you know. Social services may see them Monday through Friday, ministers on maybe Wednesday through Sunday, but it's pretty much the same people in the same community. So we really need to make sure that we start making that link together in terms of what needs to happen. So one of the cases important that I want to talk about today in terms of how trauma really impacts all of us is what happened to Kingston Frazier. And I know that this is still really raw in the community, and it's one that, as I was reading about this and watching the YouTube videos of the event, my heart bled as well. It was really difficult. You know, I found myself being just as angry as everyone else. I can imagine the trauma from the community in terms of people feeling and trying to figure out what happened with this. And one of the things that I recognized that night for me was that not only did we lose 60-year-old Kingston Frazier, we lost 3 other young men that night as well. Their lives ended also. And we can sit around and ask, what happened to those 3 young boys in terms of, how could they do something like that? But we also have to ask, what happened to them early in their lives that would produce something like that? And I think that if we don't start asking the right questions, we're going to keep getting what we have. And so we have to start thinking about what happened to them and when should someone had intervened in their lives. And I think that's going to be a real issue. So one of the things I really feel very strongly about is that we need to keep Kingston's name alive. We cannot forget about him or his family. And I am going to ask, if you don't mind, just a moment of silent prayer for the family, because too often, right after the event, everyone's there for them, but it's the weeks and months after that that they really need the strength, and we need people to continue to pray for them. So could we give them just a moment of silent prayer for the strength? Thank you. So one of the things I think we need to remember about this is that there was trauma on so many levels. As I was watching the news, I could hear the trauma in the people's voices. I could, so there's a lot of community trauma in terms of people wondering what the heck is happening to our community. How can someone like that come from our communities? So we need to deal with that trauma. We need to deal with the family's trauma in terms of, losing a child like that. The families of the young boys. Evidently there's something going on there that that should have been detected much, much earlier. And, we start thinking about the generational trauma because this is never going to go away for some of those families. So there's just trauma on so many different levels that we need to look through. So one of the things that I'm teaching at Berry, a course called Trauma and Resilience. And we use this book by Bethel Van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score. If you have not read this, particularly if you're in a practice course or you're an instructor, you really need to read this book. This is becoming one of the classics in social work around trauma and resilience. And one of the quotes that I really like from Van der Kolk says that nobody can treat a war or abuse, rape, molestation, or any other horrendous event for that matter. What has happened cannot be undone. But what can be dealt with are the imprints of the trauma on the body, mind, and soul. And I think that that's an important piece to remember, because trauma affects you, not just in terms of mentally, but it has a physical effect. We even know that trauma impacts the brain, and for children, it alters the brain. So there's a whole neurobiology involved in that. And I think it affects us spiritually as well. And so all three levels, mind, body, and spirit, we have to look in terms of the impact of trauma. And he says that the crushing sensations in our chest that you may label as anxiety or depression, the fear of losing control, always being on alert for danger or rejection, the self-loathing, the nightmares, the flashbacks, the fog that keeps you from staying on task and from engaging fully in what you're doing. How many times you've known people or you yourself experienced something and you just can't get this always lingering there in the back of your mind? Or you think about people who undergo complex trauma on a regular basis, it's always there. And then he says that being unable to fully open your heart to another human being. And so that impacts our relationships, how we relate to our family, our friends, people around us. And it also may be the reason why, if a child has been so brutalized and seen so much trauma, they couldn't see the difference between a 6-year-old and anything else. So, we really have to think about, on all levels in terms of what happens with trauma. What we have to do now, I believe, is become trauma-informed in our social service agencies and schools and prisons, begin asking the right questions, link or knowledge of trauma and suffering among social workers and the faith community. As Reverend Hines said, social workers and ministers, we have to work together. Because I truly believe that it's not something that one group of people can deal with. We have to look in terms of mind, body, and spirit. And spirituality, having a brother who's a minister, I know that the pain and suffering will come. And we need to recognize that trauma and social work and suffering and theology are basically the same thing. And so we have to link those two together. We need to advocate for more mental health services and stop running away from this term mental illness. Stop making it a stigma. And talk to our communities, open and frankly about what mental health is and the fact that we need treatment. And I agree with some people quarters in our community who only want to pray and think that prayer alone. But I really believe that God created ministers, social workers, psychologists for a reason, and that's what we work together. Okay. And lastly, to remove mental health treatment from low-income communities, from prison back to the departments of mental health, and make sure the funding follows. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So asking the right questions. All right, so we're gonna keep it moving.
All right, asking the right questions. Again, my name is Dekeitha Stamps, I'm City Councilman here in Jackson, and I really appreciate that educational experience because we do have to start asking the right questions. And the question that comes to my mind is why? Why? Why does the trauma exist? The relationship between our pain and profits of other people have been in place for a long time. And we have to redefine that relationship because as long as it's profitable for all these different types of trauma to exist, will we really make it go away because we understand it? Or will we just understand that it's very, very profitable for all these different types of trauma to exist? This is not by happenstance or mistake. Mass incarceration was put in place right after the abolishment of slavery. I mean, the beds weren't even warm yet before they were in some kind of convict lease program back to the same slave owners that they left from. So this incarceration, whether it be chattel slavery or the penal system, it has an economic relationship that is, in some people's minds, necessary. Some people's minds, vital. Some people's minds, if you take it away, the entire system will crumble. So it must exist. So on one end, we are understanding the types of trauma, medicating the symptoms, and diagnosing and prescribing treatment for the effect of the trauma. But at some point, we must turn and look at uprooting the cause. The cause will continue to produce the effect as long as the cause is still necessary for some people's lifestyle and livelihood and whole government structures to exist. So as we dissect the trauma, which is necessary, we can't stop doing that. We must also turn our attention to the cause and look at the relationship of our community and the pain that we have and the profits of other communities, because we must learn to produce a gross domestic product that exceeds that of the penal system in order to turn the attention the other way. The most hunted species on the planet is the black man, and the most exploited is the black woman. So we must learn how to navigate this system while being hunted and exploited, and produce at a higher level to justify uprooting the cause. And as that economic block, there is not a city or state in this country that's not built off the economic of our pain. Jackson, Mississippi included. And we're gonna have to figure out and commit to uprooting the cause and build an economic infrastructure that spits off a gross domestic product at a higher level to justify uprooting the cause. So as we look at our problems in a holistic manner, I'm just here today to implore upon us to commit to uprooting the cause, because we're doing a good job of understanding the effect. And the strides you're making are miraculous. When I see some of the strides my cousin Jose Hines is doing, miraculous what he's doing. And many of you mirror those same results. But it's gonna take some more superheroes just like you on that end, but also understanding that there's an other end to this thing. And that's the cause, and understanding why these things are in place. So thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me first of all say it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank you for inviting me to share a few moments on my thoughts. And I want to thank Dr. Osby for her presentation, especially speaking about what I would call the integrated approach to dealing with trauma and suffering. I think far too long we have dealt with these issues in silos. And so we've often thought of our solutions as siloed. So we think, the solution to the problem must absolutely be economic, or political, or therapeutic, or spiritual. And I'm here to let you know that the reality is you've got to have all of those things. And so I'm thinking back to when I was a chaplain intern at a hospital in North Carolina. And whenever we would see patients, I was a chaplain intern, but of course the patient would have seen the physician, the social worker, etc. In order to understand what kind of care and interventions were appropriate, we would all sit together in a cluster to discuss the patient, because we all had different vantages of understanding and awareness about the patient's needs. Too often in our communities, we're not doing that when we talk about our young people, for instance. We've got social workers in one group, law enforcement in another group, pastors in another group, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if we're going to resolve these issues, we've got to talk about them in an integrated way. I'm thinking in particular also about I work at Alcorn State University, where I serve as religious life director. And I can't tell you the number of students who have come in as class clowns on day one. I'm sure Dr. Heidelberg can attest to that, the class clowns. But somewhere in the semester, there's a breakthrough. There was one young man in my class this semester who said to me, I need to talk to you because I need to talk man to man about some stuff. We sat in my office for 3 hours and he elucidated myriad traumas he'd experienced before getting to Alcorn. Molestation and seeing all kinds of violence and all kinds of things, and we better understood each other, but at the end of the day, he really just needed somebody he could talk to. Now, we definitely need various kinds of interventions that may cost you something numerically. But sometimes it's that people don't have people to talk to. So they let that out as being class clowns or in criminal activity. And so one of the things we've got to begin to do, as Pastor Hines shared with us earlier, is we've got to begin to think about our commitment to the community before things happen. Now, talking about Kingston Frazier and that profound tragedy, one of the things I've discovered as I've talked to different people who knew the alleged assailants is that they were young men in Richland High School attending a church, and one of the things we tend to do about these trauma conversations is only think that the folks who are traumatized are the folks who live in the hood. But there are folks who live in the suburbs, amen somebody, who've been traumatized as well. There are folks who are millionaires, who lead our country, who've been traumatized along the way. And we've got to begin to think about the fact that all of us somewhere down the road have something that's traumatized us. And it bleeds into our relationships, it bleeds into all kinds of things. My own family development is filled with trauma. The trauma of Jim Crow, Mississippi. The trauma of not being loved by a parent. The trauma of underfunded schools. And guess what happens? Those folks have kids. And we are often, because we stigmatize mental health and suffering, and allow me to say this, a lot of our baby boomer generation did not pass along the right kind of strategies to Gen Xers and millennials. So we assume that we can wash away our pain in consumption. So as long as I have the nicest house, the nicest car, living in the nicest neighborhood, I'm okay. Or as long as I get degrees behind my name, I'm okay. Criminal justice system largely the poor and people of color. But listen, there are a lot of folks who are criminals who just have white-collar crimes. And they're treated differently in the system, but they too are participating in criminal activity. So let me share with you just a couple of thoughts about interventions and why I think the integrated approach is so important. There's a recent study that just came out maybe 2 weeks ago. And in that new study, it analyzed data from 733 U.S. counties. And the data revealed that homicide, robbery, burglary, and larceny rates all decreased the more people in those counties were active in Black Protestant churches. And you can find more about that information at the Huffington Post. There's an article titled "The Black Church Matters to Black Lives." As much as we don't want to admit it and acknowledge it today, young people being involved and engaged in a black church can radically change the outcomes. Amen, somebody. Amen. And I think one of the things we've done, as much as we need to embrace the changes, is that there are some things in our traditions that we need to keep passing on. The sense of community, the sense that you're not alone in your struggle, the sense that there are spiritual and psychological and physical abuse that happens that needs to be remedied by various solutions that are also spiritual, mental, and physical. And so by the time they get to see Chief Lee Vance or one of the judges, there needs to be somebody in the room that can attend to those other issues. I think my mic went out.
maybe your way of telling me it's happening. I'll close it up.
But this last point is not just, thank you, not just in trauma, but by the time the traumatized person gets into the system. One of the things I've been working with is trying to help change legislative policies around criminal justice. And intriguingly, we've had a lot of support from libertarian Republicans, for whatever their motivations may be, to change the way we sentence. And so we begin to know that a lot of crimes are committed by persons with mental illness, or by people who have various traumas. We've got to find ways to say, instead of sending them to prison for 25 years, how do we give them a different kind of sentence to where maybe they serve off their debt to society in ways that don't put them behind bars, especially for nonviolent criminal offenses when they just got possession of weed or something like that. You shouldn't send a 21-year-old to jail for 25 years because they possess an illegal pharmaceutical substance. That may actually be happening because of the economics of their community. They can't find jobs elsewhere, so they're engaged in the black market. So we got to find ways, and once we know that trauma is happening, not to re-traumatize them by putting them in jail for a long period of time, and in prison for a long period of time, and then have them come out to go right back into jail or to prison because they can't find any work because now they're a felon. So the ways in which we experience trauma at the micro level is often maximized by the way we experience trauma at the macro level, because the system seeks to traumatize and re-traumatize. And so we need churches, we need social workers, we need parents, we need teachers who every step of the way intervene and interject so that we can break the cycle of trauma and suffering. Thank you.
Well, I'm with reentry, and for over 35 years, I've been involved with law enforcement trying to help put offenders away. But probably 10 years before I was ready to retire, it came to me that we're putting them away, but when they get out, they're coming back. So what's not being done? And there are occasions I had to speak with family members, I spoken with the offenders, and so I decided I'm going to take a different route. So I became a life coach. I also volunteered with Fresh Start, the City of Jackson's reentry program. So as we visit the prisons, I was allowed to implement a pamphlet on mentoring. So traveling down the highway, if it was a federal prison, I was getting an email that said, Ms. Jackson, I need a life coach. Ms. Jackson, I think you can help me. And a lot of the women and men would say, now I can talk to someone else versus talking to my family. So what I decided to do was, let's go a little deeper. Let's see what's going on when they get out and they can't find a job. So my thing is, they've committed the crime, they've been sentenced, they've done the time, and then when they get out, they're back to those same issues. Because we have people who are saying, because of your criminal record, I'm not going to give you that chance. Now, if you have a summit like this of business owners, everybody want to get involved in second chances. But the moment you step up and say, okay, I have someone, I'm sure they've been rehabilitated, but what we've done is we've evaluated them. We've talked to them. We've solicited help that we think they need. Can you help me? And there's no help. So what happens? If a door slams in your face 5 days a week, 2 or 3 times a day, because you're hitting the ground running, trying to find employment, what would you do? Your livelihood. You had your girlfriend to take care of you while you locked up. I've told the young ladies when they come in with the guys, you know that's gonna get old. Because eventually we're gonna tell you, you gotta work. So what do they end up doing? Going back to their old trade. So in going to the prisons, I started a what if, and that's from a project that I became involved with called the If Factor. And what the If is the If Project, I'm sorry. And what the If Project does, they go into the women's facility and they ask a question on if. So I went to Memphis, reviewed the documentary, it's a great documentary, and they did come to Jackson. They told me, you don't have to do your own thing. If you want to partner with us, you do it. So what I did what if in the prison. And I asked these women, if you would have had someone to come to you, or that you could have gone to, if there was anything that could have been said, what if you hadn't had that person? What would you have done? So when a person breaks, you know you're getting somewhere. But they want to start and say, well, if I hadn't gone outside of that door that day, the police wouldn't have gotten me. No, I need you to go back a little farther because it didn't just start there. So they go back to another crime. Some they might not even apprehended for. No, it goes back. And it ends up being there's a mental illness, there's a molestation, there's several things. But if they were never addressed, what do you think happened? And with the majority of these offenders, the issues that they have not been addressed. So when I would hear about a mother, my mother left me. My mother didn't believe me when I told her I was molested. My mother, do me a favor. The next time I come back, have made communication with your mother and find out about your mother's life. Because all women with children do not know how to be mothers. Amen. And if that issue was not addressed, then the infection just continues to grow, and that's what we're having. So as a part of reentry, the program was designed. We're going to assist you with your needs when you get out of prison. But then we get into the prison, so we can address them before you get out. We're going to help you with those documents you need. You know, with what medical treatment you need. Be honest with me. Do you need to see a A&D counselor? Do you need to see high behavior health worker over there? What are your needs? And if you keep them in the room long enough, I've learned that it comes out. This is what I need. And like, probably all, but I remember one said, sometimes all they need is somebody to talk to. And if you get the right person, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I want to know the truth from you, and I'm going to be truthful to you. So with reentry, I'm asking if there are any business owners out here, we solicit your help to help us in getting these men and women back on their feet. But until we address the issues, if they go to prison, while they're there, until we address the issues for them or with them, we're going to have the same continuing problems. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to make this rapid fire real quick. We're going to recoup some time here, but I want to get to the. We've heard from all the panelists, and we've heard different approaches. We heard integrated approach, we heard reentry, we heard asking key questions, and why do these problems actually exist? And so, for me, I want to throw in, my evaluator hat to put a plug in for these ladies, Dr. Kidd and Dr. West, who are both on programs in Mississippi right now that are responsible for early detection and possibly early diagnosis for 0 to 5 population for mental health. And so with that being said, how do we get to systems level sort of change with this topic? There are programs out there operating that are doing great work, but how do we begin to align this so that the information, like I'm just hearing about the EPA program, I'm just hearing about work that is being done in other places. But how do we begin to bridge this information gap that we have so that in my mind we're able to build an overall framework to support these young people in our communities and our families? So can somebody help me out with that?
And let me call it out.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of what it goes back in terms of really educating ourselves about trauma and how to become trauma informed, and it really goes across, I think, all social services. We're seeing it now in schools. There's trauma informed practices and care initiatives in schools. They're in prisons. They're really across the board. But we have to make the effort to become aware and to link together and realize, as we talked about, this can't happen in silos. That all of us have to really start coming together and network with each other in terms of this. Because otherwise it will just keep going on the way it's going now.
We can also just start off with the truth. I've not met not one black man that's not broken in some way. And I've not met not one black woman that's not broken in some way. Everyone in this room is broken in some way. So since we all are in need of some level of mental repair, trauma repair, and healing, submit to truth that we all have some brokenness and commit to a daily regimen of healing and detox to put into our lives. So if we start with the truth that everybody's broken, black and white, Democrat and Republican, everybody has a degree of brokenness, and we need to start applying a degree of sensitivity and healing to progress forward. Others may be broken to a higher degree because it's more economical, but we all have a degree of brokenness. So let's just diagnose it in a broad spectrum, but be comfortable saying, I have a mental illness. Me, as an individual, by my existence here on earth. And let's just start from that truth and medicate forward.
I'd like to say, I worked in the public school for the past 26 years. Most of my work has been in middle schools. For the past 2 years, I've been in elementary schools. And what I realized is that even though I loved middle schools and I saw a lot of things, and all these things that we're talking about here today are things that begin in early life. But as I began to work in elementary schools, I see that we need to start early, even as it relates to preschools. Trauma is not just physical, trauma is psychological. Trauma is environmental. And we see the behavior and we respond to the behavior. And someone on the panel mentioned asking the right questions. That is so very true. I am a believer in screening, because in screening you ask those questions that no one else asks. But we're too busy responding and putting kids out of school and sending them to, preparing them for prison, really, by isolating them into certain suspensions and certain schools and so forth. Someone said something earlier about the family. One thing I believe that we have to stop doing, especially as African Americans, is saying what goes on in the house stays in the house. Because so much of the trauma, especially early trauma, comes from the home. And so we have got to begin to look at things differently as care professionals. And we've got to begin to attack things in a different way as it relates to kids. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to say, and even the possibility of a clearinghouse where people can go and get information. Maybe we can start there.
The work that we're doing is valuable. Everyone sitting here, you out in the audience, there's a clear interest in terms of trying to reach this population. We see it every day in schools, we see it in suspensions, we see it, we know that parents sometimes believe that their young person will grow out of it and that there's really no issue, but we know better. We've heard some really great recommendations, but I would extend to this group two really important points. Understand the importance of collaboration. Please understand the importance of collaborations with your programs. It is important if you reach some milestones that you're able to report those milestones so someone else can grow from it. And that's my evaluator hat. It is so disappointing to see programs that are very successful, but they don't really have a method for how they got to that level of success. They say things like, my staff is really dedicated, we love what we do, but you can't quantify that in terms of someone else picking up that model and moving it along and starting it somewhere else, like in Laurel or in Meridian or somewhere. And so the work that you're doing, two things. Please learn to collaborate, and please learn to document and share. Document and share. Our young people need us. You're going to be in for a really important day. I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation. I know that we could talk about this in an extended period of time, but I appreciate our panelists. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. I'm sure that we will revisit these topics in other sessions. This will conclude this half. We're going to try and catch a little time up and follow the schedule as best possible. Thank you for your attention again. Have a great one.
Evaluations on the table.
Greetings, everyone. We're back. Mr. D. Measy here with our good councilman, Dekeitha Stamps. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, man, we're on the back end of the Black Family Summit.
Woo,
Just take place. Man, wasn't it awesome?
It was awesome.
You know, and we're fortunate to have played a role in this.
That's right.
The turnout was exceptional. It was the best that they've had in the last 3 years at least.
Right.
Since 2014, and it might have even been one of the better ones that was held since they began.
That's right.
And so I want to, of course, be so grateful to the Black Family Summit supporters, including Mississippi Family for Kids, the Mary Nelms Foundation, Campbell Investment Group, Women for Progress of Mississippi, the New Foundation Theological Seminary, Jackson State University, One Voice, Tougaloo College, the City of Jackson, Mississippi, Mount Eva Missionary Baptist Church in Terry, Mississippi, the NAACP, Families as Allies, BUDS, and the Department of Mental Health. You know, of course, you know, you and I, we both have an affiliation with Respect Our Black Dollars, which, you know, presses towards Black economic community control. And we do the radio show, we do the buy-ins with quality Black-owned businesses, and we're always promoting that if you don't control the economics of your community, you cannot dictate the destiny of your community.
That's right.
And you just so happen to be serving on a panel which dealt with the trauma of mass incarceration.
That's right.
And if I'm correct, that trauma opened up with the incredible PowerPoint presentation by Dr. Osby,
That's right.
who was actually one of the visionaries of this conference.
That's right.
That's held, and now it's 5 years going, and it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So you came on right after Dr. Osby offered that exceptional presentation. Tell me, what was that like?
Well, first, I was in awe of her presentation.
Yeah.
I took so many notes during her piece, and if you haven't seen her piece, go find that video, look at it. Her piece was exceptional.
Right.
She ended with, we need to start asking the right question.
Right.
So me being the simplistic guy, I stand up, disregard all my notes.
Right.
My prepared overnight speech where I went over it several times, and I just wrote why.
Yeah.
Because we have to start asking the question,
Right.
Why is the trauma existing? Why is it perpetuating so much?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
What's the cause?
Right.
And we know it's an economic issue here.
If you're not getting into the economics, you're not going to be able to promote the right solutions.
The economy of the prison industrial complex
Yes.
touches every level of government, city, county, state, federal,
Right.
global,
Right.
the businesses that are tied into it,
Right.
the corporations
Right.
who are fed by it.
Right.
So I said, if we don't start looking at the cause, the root cause
Right.
of the trauma
Right.
it's an economic issue.
Yep.
And until Black people produce an economy, a GDP,
Yeah.
a gross domestic product,
Right. You're hitting it.
that makes it financially infeasible to keep doing that, because now this is working.
Right. The death, disease, destruction model is working, right? The profit for prison model is working, right? And that's generating economics. So long as that's working, what?
Right. As long as that's working to the degree it's working,
Why should I
there
stop?
will be no economic interest. Actually, they will view everything to stop that as a threat
That's
to
there you
the
go.
economy.
There you go. There you go.
The economy will crash if that goes away.
That's right.
They need to be shown a picture
Mm-hmm.
of a healthier supplement to the economy than that,
Yeah.
so that they can say, oh, well, we got to stop that. Just like integration.
Yeah.
Black folks wanted desegregation. Some people said, hold on, there's an economic thing here.
Right.
An untapped market.
Right.
If we allow them to integrate, we can put a Walmart in the neighborhood, a chicken,
Right.
a
And they can't
KFC,
compete.
and they can't compete.
They can't
And we
compete.
can get the money.
That's right.
So now we must show
Mm-hmm.
the economy,
Yeah.
the economic benefits of a healthy black community.
And so that's why I know as part of Respect Our Black Dollars, we got involved to the degree
Right.
we did because of the intersection with the economic component. Now, there's no way in the world that anybody can say that I
Right.
totally aligned with Mississippi Family for Kids on all their views and values. There's no way that we can say that Dr. West, Dr. Osby, and Dr. Nellums are in a rubber stamp for what comes out of my mouth and the type of positions that I promote,
Oh,
right?
not either.
Right, you know, and so we're different, but we converge, right?
When it comes to families,
Yep, there you go. Yeah,
when it comes to families,
right,
the health
yes,
and quality of our families,
right.
that is our first institution
Yes.
that must be solidified.
That's right,
We may not believe in the same faith.
right.
We may not believe in the same type of, they're different Baptists, right?
Right, we sing out of different hymnals.
Right. But we believe in family.
That's right.
And a healthy family is undergirded by provision and protection. The role of the father.
That's right.
Provide and protect.
That's right.
The economy provides that provision.
Right.
And if we don't have a healthy provision element in our community that's productive,
That's right. That's the actual
That's
ultimate.
healthy.
It's the ability. The ultimate aspect of manhood is actually production.
that's right.
And the one that goes right above that is in line with it. It deals with a priestly function, which actually manages the productive capacity. But now we get into the
Right.
definitions of manhood. And I
So
know
following up Dr. Osby was myself.
Yeah.
I talked about that.
that why, right?
Why?
Right.
The root cause. Then my brother,
Yes.
Pastor C.J. Rose.
Oh man, smooth.
The MDiv.
Yes.
Pastor Rose swooped in with that angelic, swan-like swim.
Yeah, it's like a grace he has, doesn't
He has a certain
he?
grace
He doesn't walk,
about
he
it.
saunters.
Right. You know, he just floats in. He don't
Yeah,
have feet.
that's right.
He just kind of levitates in.
Well, you know,
right?
sometimes when I see him, I think of that song by Jeffrey Osborne, "On the Wings of Love." And when, if you ever been to the concert, Jeffrey Osborne sings that song. It's like that floating that you just described. It's a certain type of grace. But go on and please speak briefly
Yeah,
about
Pastor Rose,
how you
I'm
did that.
looking at my notes here because Pastor Rose came in and he brought in a role of the church, the role of the community, the role of government, and just sold it all in
Yeah,
together
yes.
in a heavily angelic way that he has, and only he can do.
Yeah, he's
And then right behind him comes Patricia Jackson. She is heavily involved in the Fresh Start program for the city of Jackson, nonprofit organizations, and really touching people.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
And so she brought in her angle. So it was a wonderful constructed panel that brought in several angles, same issue, same focus, and it was all woven together by the love and support of Dr. Nellums and everybody who put together the Black Family Summit. So it was a wonderful panel. Definitely take notes when you watch it. Definitely take notes. And watch it a few times because I was on the panel. I took more notes about what the others were saying, and then when I watched it again, I absorbed what I wrote and what they said to a higher degree.
That's right. Well, you know, one of the things that you and I were discussing earlier was the need to recognize, you know, what's at the core of this. And we had to get on black women, right? And of course, Dr. Osby, Dr. Nellums, and Dr. West, in their phenomenal and graceful way to help bring this thing together for the last 5 years. This year being included in that. Now even Respect Our Black Dollar getting on board as one of the people and groups to help push and promote this to the larger community where you have all these research-based solutions and they were locked up in those walls. now that's coming out to a wider audience. But just talk a little bit about the role of the black woman and also the need for encouragement and empowerment of the black woman through this type of information and these spaces for healing.
Well, we have to create safe places and spaces for open and honest dialogue.
Yes, yes.
That's with the goal of solutions.
Yes, yes, yes.
Not just venting to vent, not just venting to pray,
Right.
not just venting to go through some emotional roller coaster,
Right.
but releasing to solve, to heal.
Right, right.
And that's what Black Family Summit does and has done every year. This year to a higher degree than I've ever seen before. And that was because of a lot of other people started flapping their wings and putting some wind underneath it.
Yeah.
And the role of the black woman here is because in our community, the black woman has been put in a position to have to provide, protect, nurture, all these different roles.
That's right.
No other point in history have women been asked to do
And expected.
and expected,
Right.
not just asked.
That's right. But also expected, right.
to do all these different roles. So we must look and say, okay, how can we add value, healing, support, real support?
That's right.
Not, I'm gonna pray for you.
Right. But some structural
But
elements,
some
right?
structural piece, from a therapeutic angle, from a spiritual angle, from an economic angle.
That's right.
And a networking of folks who want to get better because the real healing took place in the hallway.
That's right. That's right.
Sisters who met sisters who aligned with them and said, you know what, I'm gonna add you to my village.
Yes.
I'm gonna add you to my village.
Right, right, right.
Okay, we may live across town from each other, but we got cars.
We got to call it the village of best practices.
Right.
Right.
So, and people start to deconstruct their village and rebuild the village they want for their families so they have a more healthy village.
That's right.
Right? So that's what I see happening is allowing folks who are solution-based to come together and say, you know, I need to solve my problem.
Right.
I don't want to just talk about my problem.
Right.
I want to solve my problem. I want to have a community where the economy is healthy so my 16-year-old can get a job.
Right.
I want a healthy community.
That's right.
That's unity.
That's right.
That's able to provide for all the levels of life for the people in it.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's what I see the role of black women is being involved in these types of activities so that you can in turn teach to the young, also network with other like-minded folks who have solutions and even interested in your same position. So I think these activities are a healthy, productive way for black women to be involved in, but understand the true role. You're being asked to do something that's outside of nature.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's submit to that. You're being asked to hold a title and perform more so than any women have done in a long time.
That's right. And it's not fair.
And it's not fair.
Right. And you can't base it off of what should be.
Right.
Right.
It's based on what he is.
Yes, that's right.
And so this is the hand that's played. So we have to wrap our arms around folks and help them get through this as we rebuild, deconstruct the jungle to recreate the generation that's a generation from us now, a healthier community and a better community as we navigate away from this. Because we got navigated into this, and we're going to have to navigate and decide our way out of this and through it.
That's right.
Right. So that's what I feel the role of black women are right now is not just living through the moment.
Right.
How do you navigate your way out of this to provide something different for your family?
Well, family, you know, we've reached that time, and I want to thank you, Councilman Stamps.
Thank you very much.
This is just one of our summaries for the 5th Annual Black Family Summit with this segment that dealt with the trauma of mass incarceration. I'm Mr. D. Measy. I want you to come and tune back in. Make sure you review the videos for the 5th Annual Black Family Summit. You can also go to Respect Our Black Dollars to get more of the videos that preceded this and will come after. We look forward to having you tune on in and being part of the solutions. Once again, there's no valid substituting for reading, research, or study. We must know thyself, to love thyself, to save ourselves. One life, one love, one enemy, one God, one aim, one destiny. Motto tip, may you prove worthy of abundant prosperity and continue to be a blessing to others.